First of all, thank you all very much for coming. As Attorney General, one of my responsibilities is to look out for Virginia consumers. I am the voice of consumers on a number of regulatory matters, things like fighting for consumers, lower electric bills, utility rates, going after businesses that engage in illegal practices and hurt consumers. And one of the areas that we need to continue our efforts is in the area of predatory lending. Sadly, Virginia is becoming known as the predatory lending capital of the East Coast. And that is something that I cannot accept and will not accept. Neither will Delegate Surovell. And it hurts our state's reputation. And importantly, it also means that a lot of people in Virginia are being hurt. All along the Route 1 corridor, around Fort Belvoir, and in a lot of places around Virginia. Low-income Virginians, military families, and others are being hurt by these predatory loans, and we've got to do more than we are to stop it. Back when I was in the Senate, I worked hard to try to crack down on predatory lending. We made some gains to stop some of the practices, but didn't get nearly what we should have. And as a result, we're seeing a proliferation of predatory loans in a lot of places, including along Route 1. I've heard stories of, back when I was in the Senate and as Attorney General, where people take out these loans because they're in desperate or necessitous circumstances. They feel like they have nowhere else to turn, and they pay month after month after month, and they feel like, surely we've paid this loan off by now. And they go in, and even after paying thousands of dollars, multiples of what the original loan amount was, they find out that they haven't even paid any of the principal back, and they still owe the full amount of the loan. These types of activities are pernicious. They, in my view, hurt Virginia's economy. They're hurting Virginians, and we need to do more about it. Now, in my office, earlier in the spring, I announced that I was reorganizing and regalvanizing my Consumer Protection Division. One area of focus is on predatory lending, and I'm now looking at a number of different strategies to see what we can do. We are aggressively enforcing the laws that we do have on the books. A lot of times we hear stories where the lenders are not following the laws to the letter, and when we find out they're not, we will take enforcement action, swift and prompt enforcement action. But we also need to do more on education to inform consumers that rarely, if ever, is one of these loans really a good answer to their situation. We're also looking at legislative solutions, and while there are some things that I can do as Attorney General, based on the laws we have in Virginia right now, we really need to have a legislature who will stand up for these low-income consumers who are being hurt. And Delegate Surovell has proven over and over, as a member of the House of Delegates, that he is doing that. He is standing up for them, and we need that strong voice in the legislature, in the state Senate. That's why I'm really glad that he is highlighting this problem along Route 1 and elsewhere. It's a problem not just here, in a lot of localities around the state. And together, we're going to make progress on this, but we need people like Scott Surovell in the state Senate to be a strong voice for Virginia consumers.
You mentioned when you found laws aren't being followed that you are going to aggressively go after those. Can you give us an example of enforcement actions you take?
You know, if the notice requirements aren't met, or if a payday lender is also offering certain other loan products in the same space, sometimes they're not able to do that. So when
That's legal though, right? I mean, so if these folks often, in fact, Surovell was talking about, it's totally legal for them to offer like a consumer finance in the same space. That's illegal, right?
Well, and one of the problems, again, I think the point that you're making is that a lot of these loans are legal. That's exactly the problem, is that when people find themselves in necessitous circumstances, it can be for a lot of reasons. It could be an illness, it could be a loss of a job, it could be, you know, a car breaks down. And these loans are often designed to fail from the get-go. They're based on not the ability to repay the loan, but the ability to collect. And because the car is there as collateral, they're very successful at doing that.
So what kind of enforcement? You mentioned when you find the laws aren't being followed. I just was trying to
Have you closed any down? Have you done anything?
We have taken some enforcement actions. There are some cases, and we can get you those cases and examples, and the court papers will say precisely how the laws will be followed.
So basically, you think these companies prey on desperate people?
Absolutely, and first of all, morally, when somebody is desperate, they have nowhere else to turn. I think it's wrong. When I was a state senator, I had constituents of mine where they lost a job or they were a little bit behind. They ended up taking out these loans. They pay over and over and over, and then 6 months later, they find out they still owe the same amount. I've got an example where somebody borrowed $1,000. After paying $5,000 back, they still owed $1,000 according to the lender. So that's why it is trapping a lot of people in a cycle of debt that they can't get out of. And again, to think that Virginia is becoming known as the predatory lending capital of the East Coast hurts our reputation as a state, and it means a lot of people are being hurt.
At this point, you're watching it over that more aggressively, but it doesn't sound like you're able to do anything by way of like shutting them down or restricting even where they locate, aside from legislation that hasn't been passed.
Right, and again, we are going to enforce the laws we have. When we find out that some of the regulations aren't being followed, we will crack down on it. But the biggest problem is the laws themselves. Open-end lending is wide open and extremely dangerous for a lot of consumers.
Explain what that means.
An open-end loan is one in which there's kind of it's like a revolving credit, and there's an exemption for that under state law. So while payday loans at least have some restrictions attached to them, and closed-end car title loans have some restrictions, not nearly what we should. Open-end lending and these revolving loans are completely, for the most part, unregulated. That is a huge problem.
Those revolving loans exist with car title loans?
Yes, they're out there, and it's a huge concern of mine.
And so there are cases specifically that hopefully you'll provide us with that are specific to car title loan companies and not payday loan companies?
We've got a couple. We took some action against some folks that are making illegal car title loans as recently as I think a month or two ago.
Yeah. Oh, that was a pawn shop. I remember
making illegal title
a pawn
loans,
shop in like Fredericksburg. There was also
unlicensed title loans.
Unlicensed title loans.
But again, while we can take some enforcement action around the edges, for the most part, these loans are being made legally, and that's the problem. And we need stronger laws. We need people in the legislature like Scott Surovell who will stand up for low-income Virginians and consumers who are in difficult situations.
What law needs to be made to stop the practice?
Well, a simple one would be to go ahead and not have an exemption from the usury laws. We could have a 36% cap on interest rates. A lot of these loans carry interest rates with an APR of anywhere from 200 to 300%, and that's very quickly, within a few months, makes it difficult for anyone who's trying to make ends meet to pay off the loan.
To get anything done in the legislature, you could use the help of the governor, but he's also got all kinds of issues, gun control and things coming up. What are the chances that this will be one of his priorities?
Well, I think a lot may depend on what happens this November, and that's why we need to help elect people like Scott Surovell to the state senate. The state senate is right now 21-19. I think if we had legislators who were willing to stand up and protect consumers against these activities, we would be able to do something. There are other states that are able to do it, but Virginia has allowed these lenders to proliferate, and that's why we have these problems.
But if nothing changes in the election or very little changes, where does this fall in his priorities?
You know, you'll need to talk with him about where that would rank in priorities, but for me, I've seen firsthand and talked to consumers and families who have been really hurt by this. It's a huge concern of mine. I'm the voice of consumers in Virginia, and I'm going to stand up and fight for them.
All right, well, first of all, thank you all for coming out here today. We're here to talk about a real problem that's developed in the Route 1 corridor in Virginia over the last, it's actually been going on for more than 6 years, but specifically these car title lenders for the last 6 years. Back in 2010, the legislature legalized car title lending, and a lot of that, it didn't really take off initially. But in 2011, the legislature passed a bill that allowed car title lenders to use out-of-state titles as collateral for their loans. And as soon as that happened, this business exploded in the Route 1 corridor. And today, between the Wilson Bridge, Fort Belvoir, and Quantico, we now have, within a half-mile Route 1, 21 different car title lender locations all up and down the road. To me, this business has completely exploded. In Virginia, there was about, they have to file these annual reports. The reports show that about 1 out of 4 people fail on these loans within the first 60 days they buy them. These people lend money at interest rates of 30% a month, which comes out to an APR of 264%. To me, that's completely outrageous. Most of the people that get these loans are on the margins of credit already. They can't afford to be borrowing loans, and then many of them end up losing their cars. According to the statistics filed by the State Corporation Commission and the reports, 19,000 cars were repossessed in Virginia last year. That's about 500 per senator in Virginia. Given the economics of this corridor, it's probably more than 500, probably 500 to 700 of the constituents that I look to represent in the 36th district. Probably several hundred people I currently represent today in the 44th district. This problem is out of control. These predatory lenders, they target the military, they target low-income families, they target people who are non-native speakers, and they target people from other states. And that's why this one right here is located about half a mile from the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. This business is not allowed in DC or Maryland at these kinds of interest rates, so they advertise on TV, attract people in to get these loans, and it's bad, it's predatory, it needs to stop. The other thing that's going on that I hope to address next year, I tried to address last session, I hope to address this year, is that many of these businesses co-locate other types of financial entities within these shops. So they offer more than just car title loans. Car title loans are highly regulated. These other kinds of loans that they give are not highly regulated. So some people come out of these shops with products that are not car title loans, that have even worse interest rates, that have longer payment terms, that are even harder to get out of. And these kinds of predatory tactics, these kinds of bait and switch tactics need to stop, and I hope to pass legislation next year to deal with that.
Yep.
So that's all I can say.
And some people might say, look, it's buyer beware. These people should know what they're getting into.
A lot of people, when they go to get these loans, they're on the edge. They're on the financial edge. They're on the margins. They're desperate. A lot of people don't understand the complexities of these documents. A lot of people that sign up for these, they don't have a good understanding of English. There's a lot of people that sign up for these that they're having psychiatric problems or medical problems, and they can't fully understand what they're signing when they sign. And existing consumer protections are not adequate to prevent them from signing. For example, I've met people that have signed these who have had severe medical problems, who've actually died. My office has represented people who have actually died during the process of repaying one of these things because they were having difficulty paying medical bills. Huh?
Can you all give us like a real example of what they might sign and then what they might owe every month and maybe not realize what they're going to owe?
The average loan, according to the State Corporation Commission, is about $1,000. So that means, and it's a 6-month term, I think. So if you borrow $1,000, your first month's payment of interest is $300. Your principal payment is probably $50 to $75. So you borrow $1,000, you're paying back about $350 a month over a 6-month term. Is typical what people get. And I've done the numbers on these things. For one of these shops to make $300,000 of revenue a year, all they got to do is sell one $1,000 loan a week. That means they end up having about $52,000 at 264% interest, which means they can make about $300,000 in interest revenue off these things alone. And these guys are fully protected because they're only allowed to lend. They're only allowed to borrow. People are only allowed to borrow up to 50% of the equity of their car. So when one of these people defaults, they simply just take the car, sell the car, and they get paid in full on their loans. They have very little risk.
These people aren't doing anything illegal.
No, this business is completely legal under the Virginia Code, but it's completely out of control. It takes advantage of people, and I think it needs to be more highly regulated than it already is.
So supporters in this industry, the General Assembly, will see another option in loans on the black market.
I've heard about this black market for loans. I'm not sure it really exists very much in Virginia. I mean, I think we read about it a lot in the movies, and people are paranoid about the mafia, but I think when people get desperate for money, they end up borrowing money from their family and from their friends and from other people, not from the mafia or illicit sources. And so I've seen very little evidence of black market loans like that. You see very little evidence of it in the Virginia court system. I mean, I can't remember the last time I heard about somebody being charged with usury in a Virginia court. So that's thrown out there, but I've yet to see very many real-life examples of it today.
You mentioned the upcoming General Assembly session. Talk about
I've
Just
put in
explain that.
I've put in 2 pieces of legislation so far to try and address these problems, and so have other people. First of all, I put in legislation that would prohibit any other type of financial entity being co-located with a car title loan. So when you walk into a car title loan shop, you know you're only getting a car title loan. You're not going to get a consumer finance loan or get some other kind of loan that's unregulated. That's number one. The second thing I put in was I put in legislation that would allow counties to limit the number of these locations that could be located within a close distance to each other. For example, right now, the Virginia Code authorizes Fairfax County to regulate the number of pawn shops that can locate in a specific area. Fairfax County has adopted an ordinance that allows only 1 pawn shop per supervisor district. And that's why in this section, Route 1, you only have 1 pawn shop, and that's it. And I put that bill in, it died in committee, and the committee, basically had no interest in further regulating this business. The third type of statute you've seen is that Delegate Patrick Hope put in legislation last year that would prohibit a car title lender from being located within a certain distance of a military base or a casino. As many of you know, there's a $1 billion casino being built about 5 minutes from where we stand right now. That's another thing I'm worried about, is people coming over here, getting $1,000 in their loan and going and putting it on a red or black on a roulette wheel and losing their car immediately. Because people get desperate, they do those kinds of things when they need money. And now I'd just like to, the other thing that we're here about is that recently I was very excited to see that the Attorney General of Virginia recently reorganized his office to focus one section of his Consumer Protection Division solely on predatory loans. And so they have a new predatory lending unit that's going to focus on making sure the laws are enforced on these people. That's why I'm excited to have here our Attorney General Mark Herring, who's going to speak next.